speaker for this session is David Grainger, who's the Senior Medical Device Specialist at the MHRA. And he is going to talk about that knotty problem of when is your digital product a medical device, and what are you going to do, what do you need to do if it is? David, over to you.
So, I'm going to talk about the history of regulation of medical devices and tell you about what a medical device is and when a product is a medical device, tell you about what advice we give and some of the changes that are coming this year. So, a brief history of medical device regulation and some of the problems we have. So the regulations mainly come from 1993, so it's based on physical devices and the classification rules are based on physical things. So software is a bit of a problem really with what we've got. It wasn't included in the original definition of what a medical device was. It was somewhere in there as software necessary for a device to perform its function. So it's built-in software at the time. In 1994, software was included in European guidance, and it was thought that software could be a device in its own right if it was placed on the market to aid another device to do what it needed to do. So we come to 2007, and hurrah, software was included in the definition of a medical device, and that was introduced into UK law in 2010. 2012, we're catching up now, and the European Union provided specific guidance on standalone software and provided guidance on classification rules and gave examples in the guidance. We produced some guidance in 2014, and last year we produced an updated interactive guide. We're based on questions we were frequently asked by manufacturers. So the current framework is there are 3 European directives: a General Medical Device Directive, an In Vitro Diagnostic Medical Device Directive, so that's based on samples taken from patients and analysed in a lab, and the Active Implantables Medical Device Directive, which looks at, well, implantable devices that are powered, so pacemakers and the like. And then they're implemented into UK law as the Medical Device Regulations of 2002. So what is a medical device? So for that we have to look at what a manufacturer says the thing is to be used for. So we don't regulate what you do with a device, it's what the manufacturer says you do with it. So we look at what the device labelling says, what the instructions for use say, and we look for promotional materials that a manufacturer provides. And if it is one of the listed medical purposes, then it is more likely to be a medical device. So prevention of disease, diagnosis, monitoring of disease, treatment, compensation for injury or handicap, or looking at investigation, replacement or modification of the anatomy. And lastly, control of conception. So some examples of software medical devices. An app that says it can diagnose skin cancer. An app that gives you a personal risk of a disease. A drug dose calculator, for example, for insulin. Software that's intended to influence a specific treatment or a specific device. And this one, an app that is designed specifically people with visual impairment to enlarge text. So we have a look at stuff that isn't a medical device. So an app that just records an image of a skin condition and then that is viewed by a clinician afterwards isn't a device. Something that gives a risk indicator for a specific but large population group isn't a device. Apps that monitor fitness, health or well-being aren't considered to be devices. And a reproduction of a paper document for an algorithm in a digital format but it doesn't have any function wouldn't be considered to be a device. And a general purpose image magnifier isn't a medical device. You can use it for the same as the CE mark device, but it isn't a device. So the requirements for medical devices are that you must follow a conformity assessment. And this depends on the classification of the device. So classification is a risk-based system from class 1, which is the lowest risk, to class 3. Class 1 devices are considered to be low-risk devices, and there's a very light touch regulatory approach to this. You, as a manufacturer, self-certify that you meet all of the requirements. You register with us as a manufacturer, and that's all you need to do. Class 2A, 2B, and Class 3 devices require the involvement of what's known as a notified body, and they are there to assess how you are CE marking your device. You need to demonstrate that your device meets what are known as essential requirements. So this is a list of things that the device has to do. You will also have to perform a clinical evaluation, and this is either via what's known as a clinical investigation, or you can evaluate relevant scientific literature as another approach. You can also use what are known as harmonized standards. So these are listed at European level. So the requirement is that you demonstrate essential requirements are met, and you can do this by using harmonized standards, and they presume conformance with the relevant requirements. And this is a list of those standards, and they're not particularly open, and they're quite costly to buy and to follow. So what help can we give? So our guidance, which came out last year, is an interactive document and is aimed at the most common questions we've seen about CE marking. And it just covers standalone software, not software that's part of a device. So we have lots of nice flow diagrams for deciding which route to take of the 3 device directives. We look at what medical purpose there is. So we provide a list of things that we consider not to be devices, and we look again at the functions that I discussed earlier. And on each page we give a summary of, again, what we think is a device, what isn't, and what doesn't look like a device. And then for the 3 directives, we give general advice on classification rules and the other requirements. We also offer what is our innovation office, and it's there to help innovative products come to market. And we encourage people to contact us earlier to discuss their products and see if we can help them. We can provide scientific and regulatory advice about the products you're looking at. So what changes are coming? So since 2012, we've been working on a revision of the directives. A lot of this was as a result of the PIP breast implant issue in France. And they're going to be regulations. There's no national implementation. And it's going to increase scrutiny for manufacturers, distributors, and notified bodies. It's going to introduce what's known as a universal device identifier. So you can identify and trace a device through the supply chain down to the final patient, hopefully. And it's going to establish and update clinical evaluation plans and post-market clinical follow-up. I won't mention Brexit, but this is the plan we have at the moment. There'll be two regulations, a general and active implant regulation and an in vitro diagnostics medical device directive. We think they'll start May this year, and then there are some transition periods of 3 years for the general regulations and 5 years for the in vitro diagnostics regulations. There are specific software changes. As I said earlier, we're working on rules and based in the 1990s. So there are requirements to look at interaction between software and IT environment. There are requirements to look at the computing platform that you're using. There are requirements to look at security issues. And there's also requirements to look at lay users of your device. And there's also a software-specific classification rule and, again, traceability for your device software. So the software classification rule is somewhat may cause problems. We're looking at it. It'll require that whereas most software today can only fit into class 1 classification, it looks like most software is going to be at least 2A classification, so you'll need a notified body involvement. And if your software may directly or indirectly cause death or serious injury, then it'll be a class 3 device. A serious deterioration in health, a class 2B device. And again, for monitoring, class 2. There's also requirements on distributors and importers, so they are going to have to verify that their software on their app stores is CE marked when it needs to be. The manufacturer is identified, they know who it is. The product has been labelled correctly, it's got instructions for use, it's got a universal device identifier. And if they think there's a problem with any of those, they must inform the competent authority of that issue. So in summary, digital products that make medical claims are likely to be regulated as medical devices. The requirements are there just to ensure patient safety and that the product does what they say it does. And the requirements placed on manufacturers are going to increase once the new device regulations are agreed, which should be by May. Oh, lunch.
Michael, thank you very much.